Hey everyone, welcome back. I wanted to talk about something I've been thinking a good bit about lately, and that is developer burnout. The reason I want to talk about that is that I've been experiencing something of burnout myself lately at work. I just finished up a really busy time where I was on quite a challenging project, and so I wanted to talk a little bit about that, strategies I've found helpful for dealing with developer burnout, and also some strategies that help in general, even if you're not a developer, that I think would be good to implement if you're experiencing some kind of burnout, even if you're in a non-technical field. Okay, so these strategies are generally going to fall in three buckets. Number one is taking care of yourself. Number two is boundaries, and basically separation between work and the rest of life. And number three is about coding itself. So let's get into it. Okay, number one, taking care of yourself. All of these things are going to seem like really self-explanatory things to do that anybody would tell you to do, whether you're a developer or not. But I think they make a huge difference. They are cliche for a reason, and that is that they really matter. And so those are going to be things like getting enough sleep, what you eat, exercising. Going all the way back to college, for me, exercise has been kind of a cornerstone. I know that when I'm exercising, when I'm kind of getting that endorphin rush, when I am moving my body, I'm going to feel a lot better. It's, for me, an amazing stress relief. My typical exercise is running, and I kind of get a bit of the runner's high. It's just a great release. For me, it's a way of kind of letting all of that stress melt away. And for me, it's just kind of been something I've always gone back to that's been super helpful, regardless of kind of the stage I've been in, whether that was in college and I had a stressful time with exams, or in work. In this most recent period, exercise and specifically running has been huge for me. Next is sleep. So sleep for me is another one of those things where if it's not going well, if I'm not getting enough sleep, then everything else kind of falls apart. Another one of those cornerstone things. So for example, I had in this most recent kind of stressful period at work a few nights where I was up until midnight and 1 a.m. trying to get work done. And the next day I was just not at my best. So ideally at work you want to bring your best self to the table. And in addition to that, coding requires a lot of hard thinking, and so that requires rest and mental energy, right? And so for me, I found that when I've had to kind of burn the midnight oil in order to get stuff done, the next day has suffered to some extent because of that. And so to the greatest degree possible, I'm always trying to get at least 8 hours. Somewhere in that 7 to 9 range is perfect. And if I'm not getting that, at least 7, then I'm really starting to feel it. I may be a little bit sensitive. I may be a little bit of a baby about it, but I think it's important for anybody to be getting enough rest. Now, as I mentioned, none of that is necessarily mind-blowing stuff. That's what you're gonna find if you Google how to deal with burnout. It's all gonna be, getting enough rest, eating, sleeping, stuff like that. Now I'm gonna get a little bit more into the stuff that are specific to working in knowledge work and specifically as a developer. And that all has to do with the separation between work and the rest of life. So my number one tip here is to limit notifications. And plenty of other people have written about this. Cal Newport is really famous for writing about it in his book Digital Minimalism and his other book Deep Work. And to some extent I've been inspired by that. I've also been inspired by people I've worked with and learning about their examples for how they keep distractions and worrying about work to a minimum. A large way that people I know do that is by limiting notifications. So there are a few different ways of doing this. I've customized Slack on my desktop to not get the little ping sound, and it's amazing what a huge difference just that has made, because whenever you get that kind of ping sound, whenever you have a direct mention, it's just kind of stressful, right? And I didn't even realize I was kind of like tensing up every time I got one of those notifications. So I just completely disabled that sound. I disabled the notification that comes across the top of the screen when you get a direct mention. And now basically I just have to look at the icon to see the little red bubble thing to see if I have an actual notification message. And that has been a huge game changer for me. Also on my phone, I've customized a few different things. I have Windows set to where I can only get notifications on my phone during the workday, and those notifications don't make a noise. So I tweaked the settings on my iPhone so that even if I do get a Slack direct message, it doesn't make a noise. I have to be looking at my phone in order to get it. And so that really keeps Slack and other disruptions to a minimum. Same with Gmail and calendar. I only get calendar updates during the workday to make sure that I'm being reminded about things that I need to be paying attention to. But other than that, I am really kind of unreachable after 6 p.m. Speaking of Slack, another huge part of this is just setting expectations with the people you work with. And And a cool way I found of doing that is using the Slack status with the emoji. And so, for example, if I go to lunch, I'll write, I'm getting lunch with maybe a bowl of noodles emoji or a chicken, something like that. But you could use it for a lot of different things. For example, if you're on PTO, I make a really big point to turn everything off when I'm on PTO, on the weekends, after work hours, stuff like that. I know not everyone necessarily has that luxury. For example, like doctors, people that are maybe associates in a law firm that are expected to be accessible all the time. For those people, my heart goes out to you. I'm talking more about regular office jobs. And of course, it depends on the culture. It depends on the individual as well, to a certain extent, to set those boundaries and just kind of make it known that, hey, I'm not gonna be answering messages after 6 p.m. or whatever it is. In addition to kind of that separation between work and the rest of life, I think a big part of that as well is kind of the physical boundary. So I keep my office at home, not here, but during the rest of the year, I have my office. I only do work in there for the most part. And then I do my relaxing, my Netflixing, my other stuff in other parts of the house. And so having a physical boundary separation between where I do work and where I don't helps me to shut off a little bit better as well. On the note of physical boundaries, if you do office work, you're probably in an office a lot, or you're in your home office like me. And so another thing I found is just to get out in nature. So the exercise piece from the first bucket really helps in that if you're running outside. But even if you're not a runner, I think going out and just taking long walks with your phone off in nature is going to make a huge difference in kind of unplugging from the stimuli. So that's another way of getting kind of a boundary, a separation between work, where we're getting pings and all kinds of stimuli all the time, into a more natural setting where you're just able to kind of unwind, listen to the sounds of nature. I don't know if you can hear that bird, but the sounds of nature are good for us. I think we're meant to be kind of out in the world experiencing this beautiful goodness. And so that's another thing I would recommend. Another thing I would recommend in general is just kind of what people would call self-care in general, is another way of kind of recharging and separating from work. And so that would be hobbies, spending time with friends, spending time with family, cooking, whatever it is that you like to do. That's another great way to unplug. So I would encourage anybody to kind of delve into those things, or find a new hobby if you don't like your hobbies or don't have a current hobby. That brings us to the third bucket, which I think is the most specific to being a software engineer. And that's kind of what I would call rediscovering the love of the craft. So one thing I found is that when you're approaching or in a season of burnout as it pertains to being a developer, it's easy to kind of start to resent almost the nature of the work. It's easy to just kind of not love it when you're under a deadline, when you're having to churn out a bunch of work under the gun, if you have an unhappy customer or an unhappy client, or if you feel your team isn't pulling their weight, or any number of things that can, kind of really wear you down. It doesn't really matter what it is, but I think at that point it's it just becomes work that needs to be done, and you just kind of go into machine mode and you're just churning stuff out. And I think there's something lost in situations like that. I found for myself that you kind of lose something and you start to lose sight of why you started to get into this in the first place. And that is, in my opinion, for me, love of the craft, love of problem solving. And it's easy to see bugs, for example, if you're fixing bugs, as something that just needs to get done and resolved so you can move on to the next thing. And it's easy to miss out of the fact that this is a puzzle to be solved. And if you like solving puzzles, which I assume you do if you're a developer, then that is an opportunity for learning and growth. And so for me, I would just encourage myself, encourage other people to rediscover the love of the craft. And that might not easily be done at work if you have a lot going on. I think one thing that helps do that is working on side projects. So I've made other videos about working on side projects, but generally my advice for people working on side projects is to work on stuff that makes your life better or makes people that you love, that solves a real problem. And so I think even if you just write a little script, that could be one step in rediscovering the love of the craft, in flexing your coding chops outside of the day-to-day in a way that helps you just get back to that problem solving, that curiosity, and the things that drove you to become a developer in the first place. So that's my advice. Take care of yourself, separate work from the rest of life, and rediscover your love of the craft. That's all I've got for now, but I'd love to hear from you. How have you dealt with burnout? What are the strategies you've learned to get back in the game, to recharge? I'd love to know. I'm always kind of collecting these strategies and tactics, and you might end up helping someone else down in the comments. So please feel free to let me know. If you're still here, you'd probably like the rest of my channel, which revolves around software engineering, personal finance, and self-improvement. Consider subscribing, but regardless, thanks so much for watching to the end, and I'll see you in the next one.